Do you ever wonder about how Easter faith changes things? In a world full of war and struggle, failure and fragility, how does the truth of the resurrected Jesus help us? We live in an age of deep anxiety, an age of raging anger, and as a dip into the day-to-day news broadcasts or onto the comments in the sections of social media platforms reveals all of this to us in graphic detail. The church in the West has been chastised, terrible stories of abuse coupled with rapid decline. So how does the Easter story change anything? We have to ask ourselves, is anyone really listening? We might be tempted to one of two extremes. One is for the church to withdraw into itself. That is speaking not to the vast majority of people outside of its own walls, but rather into the increasingly empty vaults of its own echo chambers. The other is to fall into doubt, to see the resurrection as just an idle tale, and live as practical agnostics or atheists. But there is another way, a bold, humble and simple way. Just turn up. Do what you can with what you have, even in the face of seemingly impossible barriers, and just let God be God. Just do justice. Love mercy and walk humbly with your God. Mark's account of the resurrection shows clearly how the power of God breaks into the pain and brokenness of humanity. When Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Salome, turn up with the spice to anoint Jesus, no doubt they were torn apart by the trauma of all that they had witnessed. Perhaps they were having one of those mornings where it might have been easier simply to turn over, stay in bed, folded in the blankets and in grief. However, they turn up. They come to do what they can. They fretted over the problem of gaining access into the tomb, having witnessed a huge stone sealing Jesus' body in. But they turn up anyway, hoping to find help, but in no way certain that they would. They see this massive stone rolled away, but they don't know how this has happened. It's not obvious to them that God is at work. Mark makes no mention of angels, just a man in a white robe, the ordinary in the midst of the extraordinary. God is here. The women are alarmed. The words of the young man, "You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He's going ahead of you. You will see him just as he told you." Those words don't bring them any comfort. Just ponder that for a moment. It's not immediately obvious to the first witnesses of the resurrection what any of it means. They don't leap for joy, they flee in terror and amazement, and fear binds their tongues. They said nothing to anyone. This does beg the question of how the story got out in the first place. But clearly they did what they were told. They went back to the disciples, to Peter and the other disciples. Clearly the power of God is greater than human silence. So what difference does the resurrection make? It reminds us that our job is simply to turn up, to do what we can with what we have, even when we face seemingly impossible barriers and blockages, trusting that God will meet us, and God will help us to work with Him and for Him. It is not all on us. It's not in our hands. Ponder that. After all, the women did not make the resurrection happen. They just turned up with spices to anoint a dead body. They thought they were facing death. People don't seem interested in the church, which appears to be so disconnected from everyday lives of most people. Many are suspicious. Many are dismissive. And this might feel like death to us. But in spite of that, we need the boldness just to turn up in the public square, trusting that God will meet us there in God's good time. Not to face a crowd of 5,000 people, but perhaps just be there for one person, or 3 people, or perhaps a family. That means going out and building relationships in our businesses, in our politics, in our sports, in our education, in our healthcare, in our workplaces, in social spaces, perhaps even in the military. For as one padre commented, in the Falkland Islands, you don't actually find many atheists hunkered down in a foxhole. We need to simply be ourselves. Listen to others. Tell our stories of God, undefended and open. Simply holding the promises of God in the muddled reality of the day-to-day lives that we lead. We need to just turn up as we are, with what we have, aware of our limitations, but trusting God. It is in His hands. And the other thing about the resurrection is that God actually works on Saturdays. The resurrection is God's promise to us, that God is at work during the long hours of Saturday and Sunday, and the Sunday will come. Isaiah paints a picture of that Sunday, pointing to a movement of God from beyond into the life of the world. It's a picture of a glorious provision, a picture of community and comfort. And at the heart of it is the line, He will swallow up death forever. Then the Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces and the disgrace of His people. He will take away from all the earth, for the Lord has spoken. Death cast away, and with it all the horrors of war, abuse, racism, corruption, hunger, loneliness, grief, despair, and cynicism, death done away with, all our wounds healed. And in the meantime, we just have to turn up. Paul writes, Christ has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have died. Because of Jesus, there is no more fruit to come. This is the source of all our hope. In the meantime, just turn up. Do what you can. Be who you are. And with what you have. And trust that God is always at work. Always. Just turn up. That's all God asks of us. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.